Recording in progress. What are names? What are numbers?
Do I have to press this continue button? I have to press
Sorry?
continue.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have to press
wow.
continue. Otherwise, this
Wow.
box stuck up.
That's crazy. Or will the box stay there? I guess to let us know that we're being recorded
this
against
an
our will.
indicator to all that the
It's like Netflix. Are you still watching?
Yeah.
Are
Welcome,
you still
everyone.
recording this meeting? I'm surprised that doesn't pop up because all these people leaving their recordings on like fools.
Welcome, everyone, to the Heroes World Quarantine Podcast. I'm your host, Stu Pei. With me, as always, are the other hosts, the owners and proprietors of Heroes World in Markham, Ontario / Unionville / Highway 7 and Warden. John and Andre, please say hello to the world.
Hey, folks.
Everybody.
And with us in his own natural preserve in a bunker somewhere, the Prince of Mischief, Mr. Rob Goodette. Say hello.
Hey guys.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Heroes World Podcast, where we essentially have a lot of fun conversations. We record them all and share them with the internet and the world. These are conversations, of course, that would generally be had in the store. However, we cannot be in the store together. So we're sharing with the world, and hopefully this gives you some insights, and it gives you a feeling, the feels of being in the store without you yelling at us, telling us we're wrong. So don't worry.
Or being part of a community society.
Yep, you can definitely.
Hopefully, we'll be back too soon.
Yep, you can definitely do that in the comment section because everyone definitely tells me I'm wrong all the time. So thank you.
Not all the time, only when it came to Snyder stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's okay, people. People cannot like certain things. Let it go.
Yeah, it's true. Well, speaking, and those people never forgot what Mark Millar said. So we'll talk about that later on because the Snyder people never forgot, and they definitely slammed Jupiter's legacy. So, oh boy,
They slammed that to non-renewal, man. That's the fastest
Yeah.
non-renewal in a long time, man.
Poor Josh Duhamel. Did you see Josh Duhamel posted a pic of him like all ripped up in the Santa Claus hair and everything? He looked good. He was putting in the work for season 2.
Don't worry, he could be another hero. I
They'll
know.
You know what
the
funny thing about that is I read that since they made the cancellation notice, I guess Nielsen tracks the online and it's apparently Jupiter's Legacy is now skyrocketed
Number 1, yeah.
in terms of people wanting to, I guess, watch it or finish it or whatever.
Maybe it was marketing. Maybe that's why they announced it so soon because
no. Did anybody here watch all 8 episodes?
I couldn't get past the first one.
Am I the only idiot?
No, I did.
Oh, dude.
Because I felt like I needed to. I wasn't just watching Star Trek Discovery, and I'm like, I need to feel my inner Klingon. Where's my pain sticks? What's the worst thing I could watch and make myself feel bad? This. So I watched all of it and pained myself. But we can talk about that a little bit after Sweet Tooth because it's a fun topic about Jupiter's legacy. There's a lot of fun goss that we could talk about. But nonetheless, today's topic, we're going to talk about Sweet Tooth. It debuted on Netflix, all 8 episodes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some comics. We're going to do I've Spoken. And if we have some time, we'll briefly talk about Jupiter's Legacy because there's some fun stuff about that. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about Sweet Tooth. This is a comic book that debuted back in our Lord 2009. Written by Canadian Jeff Lemire. Shout outs to you wherever you are in the GTA. It was a Vertigo imprint that was, drawn. Who was the artist? I think Jose Villarabia was the artist.
I thought it was Jeff Lemire did the art for it.
No, Jeff Lemire did the art. Yeah.
Oh,
he wrote and illustrated it.
Okay. No, you're right, Jeff. Yes, I think.
Yeah, someone might be drawing.
Jose did the coloring. So yes, Jeff did the art and whatnot. So he did all of it. This is one of those interesting properties because as the insiders know that Warner Brothers owns Vertigo, but this was the magical time when Vertigo still was able to make comics, and Andre and John were able to sell them in the store, and people loved it. And then, as all things come down to, some guy in a suit is like, "Where's this IP belong? Oh, let's just shut her down." So they shut down the imprint, and now no one gets any Vertigo. Some of the best stuff because it doesn't belong to anyone, It belongs to too many people. So now everything has to belong to your company. So this is a comic book that had debuted and finished. The publication date was August of 2019, and it finished in August of 2021. So it
Yeah, like
did
40 issue run, I think.
40 issue run.
And a brand new series called Sweet Tooth Returns just started this year.
So I believe there are 6 trades. So if you want to catch up, I'm sure Andre and John can help you facilitate and read that. But we will talk.
I think they
about
just released a full compendium too.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Fancy.
So there's lots of opportunity for you to read it. I think we can, before going to full spoiler alerts and whatnot, we can say that this show is quite different than the comic. There are differences. So before you think it's a complete bang on honoring, it is not. It is a lot like Jupiter's Legacy. Things are different. Things are changed.
Yeah, it's kind of like Walking Dead. They've
Visual media,
diverged from the comic.
They've kept some things and changed something. I think the big deal about the Sweet Tooth show is that it is produced by Susan Downey and some guy named Robert Downey Jr. Some unknown.
Is that the guy from Weird Science?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, he's
he was actually also in a season of SNL. I don't know, Rob, if you knew that.
You know what? Yes, that was. I think he was one of the earlier cast members after the original. Not ready for primetime players.
I believe he
You're
died
right.
in a fire in a skit, but nonetheless, it was them producing it. The show is filmed in New Zealand, as you can tell, and it's a show. So here we go. Before we start and give us our thoughts and views, John, tell us about the show in a tell us about what is the show without give us your helpful description of the show without any spoilers or without any positive or negative description.
Okay, so Sweet Tooth is a fantasy series where the world has changed. Some type of virus has
Panini?
Yeah, Panini.
That's what the kids call it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the world has changed. Some type of virus has sprung up, and simultaneously, not knowing if it's related to the virus or not, births have started happening called hybrid births, where babies are fused with animals. And we follow the story of a character named Gus, who is the young kid who's part deer. He's got like antlers and stuff like that. And basically his journey. I don't know if we want to reveal any more other than that. But
okay. All right. So we can tell the folks at home that we watched the first 2 episodes. So before we go into additional spoilers, please note we have watched the first 2 episodes. So if you are interested in watching the first 2, I would say get on it and then come back. If you just don't care and you want to hear more, then listen to us and enjoy. But before we go, John, based on the first 2 episodes, would you recommend that people watch it?
Yes.
Rob?
Yeah, I would.
And Andre?
Yep.
Who was that? The Netflix police calling to say?
Yeah. It's like, Rob, you didn't say yes fast enough.
You didn't say yes. Rob is muted as like the big. I think it's just like Third Rock. The big giant head is like, Rob, say yes, say absolutely.
Say your phone's on mute, idiot.
that's a call from Robert Downey Jr. going, Rob.
I was in more than just Weird Science. Don't forget Chaplin.
Oh, true. Yeah. He was in a small indie movie with Marissa Tomei as well. So, okay.
Yeah. Also, I'll add, Stu, that if for some reason you didn't, you saw the comic book and you didn't dig its look and vibe, I think you will possibly dig this. So I would still recommend it, even if you felt that way about the comic book.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that in our review very quickly. But I would say that if you did not dig the art, I think Jeff Lemire did. Some people can't read comics due to the art, and some people were saying it's too much for me. Didn't have a problem. When I read the original run, I thought it was really well done. But if you don't like the look, we can definitely say this look is live action is very well done. So, John, give us your thoughts of the first 2 episodes. bearing in mind, we've already, if you haven't seen the show, we've told you that it's changed, it's different. It takes some of the core ideas but moves it in a different direction. But yeah, John, give us your thoughts on the show.
Yeah. So since Stu already kind of mentioned, I'll touch lightly on the book. I only read the first like maybe 10 issues or so. But the artwork is very different. It's not for everybody. It does grow on you. So if you did read the book and you're expecting the same thing, it's going to be a little bit different. I think you're still going to enjoy it. And then, like I said, if you saw the book and you're like, I don't like the look of this, I think you should definitely check out the series because they've done some phenomenal changes, and I'll cover it with my thoughts on the book on the show. So I tried to pinpoint exactly why I dug it. I think I dug it a little more than I thought I was going to, especially after seeing the initial trailer. I was like, okay, it looks interesting. But I actually really got into it. I actually skipped and got all the way to episode 3. So I'll count down my kind of top 5 things that kind of like I was trying to figure out why I like this so much. So number 5 is the fantasy setting. So I like that this is a Vertigo adaptation of a fantasy setting that is not, we'll kick it to Jupiter's Legacy for a second, not a typical superhero story. So it's kind of, it shows the other side of comics that we've really enjoyed. Me and Andre really got into the DC Vertigo imprint, 100 Bullets, all kinds of books. And the whole comic books aren't always about superheroes and capes and cowls and all that kind of stuff. So I really like that setting. And I especially like the fantasy setting. Me being typically a sci-fi guy, actually quite liked it. This was kind of like a different kind of a setting that we don't see a lot, I guess, in tons of TV, I guess. And now we're at that point where budgets and CG and all that kind of stuff can produce this type of thing. Number 4, I like the jumps in the storyline that kind of jump back and kind of reveal what happened. As far as I remember, in the comic book, that actually doesn't exist. I don't know if that shows up later in the series.
It does,
yeah. But they're jumping back and kind of revealing what's going on, and you're seeing these other characters, but they're not becoming main parts of the storyline yet, right? So the doctor and the girl who goes to live in the zoo and things like that. I like that. Kind of gives you a little bit of what happened before, as well as keeping it rolling with the main character that you really like. Number 3, Big Man. I think his name is Nonso Anozie or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce him, but he's really good in this role. He's very charming. You believe. So they flipped this. I think he's typically a white guy in the comic book. So they flipped him to a football player who's just a hulk of a man who you can actually believe can just decimate a group of like 10 guys.
Whoa. The other guy was a hockey enforcer. I think it's just a matter of what and
you know what? Okay, yeah, you're right. But in the comic book, I don't think it conveyed his actual like physical size. Like in this one, you see some guys hit this guy in the back, and you're like, yeah, that totally would not even phase him. So I think it does a better job.
We'll talk about that later. But yes, go on.
Yeah. So yeah, he's very charming. He's a lot more likable than the character in the comic, I find. So I really liked him in the role. Number 2, I like the narrator. I don't believe the narrator exists in the comic book, and we don't see a lot of people doing narration in TV shows right now. So me as a viewer who doesn't kind of like pick up on all the subtle things, I like having a narrator in there to kind of tell me why things are happening, what people are thinking. And
do you know who that voice of the narrator is?
It sounded very familiar.
Rob Rob?
Yeah.
It's James Brolin.
Oh yes, James Brolin. Okay, I read it somewhere. Yeah,
so
Cable himself.
Thanos.
The father himself, Thanos.
No,
James Brolin. Oh, it's father. Okay.
Yeah.
The father of Thanos.
So not Josh Brolin. Okay, yeah.
No,
James Brolin. Yeah.
And my God, does he do an amazing the way?
Yeah, it gives you a nice kind of like intro, and then kind of like I think he showed up towards the end, and then every once in a while he'll kind of like fill in between scenes and stuff like that. I really like that. I don't know where at the point in history or whatever people start thinking, oh, we can't do narration because it's cheesy or something like that. I like it. So yeah. And then the number 1 element is this kid, Gus, Christian Convery or whatever. He's killing it. I think he's like 11 years old. Delivering a performance like this, because the show is basically just resting on his shoulders. He's super cute. He definitely so one comparison to the comic is the Sweet Tooth character is actually quite ugly in the comic book. So the fact that he's this adorable looking kid and he's able to deliver, he's able to kind of be serious and be scared, and also be like this kind of like adventure loving, like when he's running around with Big Man and he's like running all over the place. It's really cute. So I think yeah, that's probably my number one reason why I think this show is hitting so hard. So that was it. That was my top 5. So
Wow, that was great, John. Not often do we hear a top 5 that's an actual top 5. So thank you. I appreciate that. Inevitably, I'm gonna go to Rob and Andre in 1 second, but I I just wanted to get your thoughts, John. After what was it about? Because you talked about the differences between the characters in terms of the comics to the hulking character right now, who is I think Tommy, right? That's in the comics. Just not to spoil, like he's like an older grizzled guy that is like kind of like a diehard, kind of all those tropes from all the 80s.
he's like a Wolverine,
yeah, he's like a Wolverine,
typical
like
action hero.
old man Wolverine. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I got to do this, and he gets in predicaments where you could believe that he actually could get bested by anyone. As the show continues, and clearly this dude is not only you know him from Game of Thrones, this guy from all the Zoo and from Dracula, of course, the TV show that never ended, it's still going to this day. Like I think my only criticism would be like later on in the show when in the comic stuff there's a lot of one-on-one confrontations with this character. I don't know who can take this guy out. Like you're gonna have to get a bigger dude. Like you're gonna call the Rock in, because again, in the comic, it's like I could see him being bested by like a guy that looks like Rob or
Yeah,
Andre,
if someone gets a lucky hit, I feel like this guy, he's so big that even if you get a lucky hit on him, like if you sucker punch him, he's just gonna shrug it off.
Yeah,
which I'm fine with. Like I also do like that this show doesn't show like I feel like a trend with superhero shows now is to always go with the over the top violence. I like how they didn't show any of the the blood and guts and that type of stuff, but what's going on. He does wreck some guys.
Yeah, I think it's done what I think Team Downey has done a good job of doing. What they watched The Boys and de-escalated down some of the violence and some of the subject matter to make it a little more mainstream, a little more streamlined. Because if you read the comics of The Boys and you watch the show, it's very different. They kind of cherry picked ideas and kept out some of the really risque stuff. And if you read the issues of Sweet Tooth, in the first 10 issues that they deal with some very strong subject matter with a house and people in it, and they kind of avoided that around potentially in this show, because again they're moving a little faster than you would expect. But all right, Rob, what are your thoughts on the first 2 episodes?
Yeah, this is tough because like John, I've skipped. I'm on. I have 3 episodes left of the series. I've crunched the first 5.
Same here. Yep, I went farther. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I sat and I really wanted to be kind of eloquent in my review and try to be as descriptive as possible. There's just something about this show that is so it's like feel good. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you're watching, it's almost like it's like a nice home cooked meal, and it just feels so it fills you up. Before this came out, Downey Jr. and his wife did a bit of a sizzle thing, and they said, listen, we were turned on to this book by some friends. They told us about it. We read it. During the adaptation process, they had to change some of the themes and some of the darker to make it a little bit more easier, a bit more palatable. And I think, and because I've never read the comic, whatever changes they've made, it feels right. Like I think that they probably kept the essence of the book, and I think there's a lot of themes. And one thing about Jeff Lemire, when he does his own works, every whether it's the Underwater Welder or I'm assuming it's
Rob's favorite.
I love that book. But anything else, he even Royal City, there's always a conflict, and it took a real world conflict, right? That needs to be addressed and worked out. And I can see this forming in this television show. First of all, so it's gorgeous to look at. The one thing I was really impressed with is that in a lot of adaptations and a lot of shows and movies that we've watched, they fiddle around with the color palette. You can go to The Boys as an example, where it's a bit of a quite a blue hue. throughout a lot of this. The Snyder cut, obviously he changes around with color a lot. They could have done something. This is a dystopian world. This is, they could have done something, and yet this is very Tim Burton-esque. Like, it pops with color, without being like over the top Edward Scissorhands, color. So what I mean is that it's very vibrant. So I really enjoy that. The character who plays Gus, or Sweet Tooth, is adorable. He's a precocious, 11-year-old kid, and who has no understanding of like the outside world, literally and figuratively, and is, they're talking about things. He has no clue what they're talking about. Like, even a fist pump. He's like, what is it? Like, what do we do? What is, he doesn't know. And it's so cool to kind of see the world through his eyes, because this is a whole new world to us. The one thing that the producers were very concerned about is that the first episode or two deals a lot with a pandemic and a virus. And this was obviously, they started production on this before COVID-19 and everything else had happened. And I think they were very concerned. And I can see that if people are going to sit down and watch this, admittedly kind of a bizarre idea or notion of a show, and it's, and they're talking about a pandemic and a virus that raged through, like, oh God, forget it. It's not exploitative based on the time. It's coincidental. And if you can get past that, I think that you will be rewarded in how wholesome and refreshing the show feels. And that was the one thing I noted. I felt like I was very refreshed. Like, it is like, just call it, it's bizarre, right? Like, the idea behind it is bizarre. You've got these half-breed individuals who are now being born. There are no more humans per se being born. All the new children are being born as half-breeds. We don't know the reason as to why. But there's a lot of themes on there, that very layered themes as well, that kind of like peeling an onion, you start to get into, and it's just wholesome and it's fun. And like I said, I've crunched 5 episodes, not because we were doing it for today, but because I am thoroughly enjoying this show, probably more than I had anticipated, to be very honest with you. And it's just refreshing to see something kind of nice and fun. And I like some of the Easter eggs they put on there. I mean, they've got the Essex County Zoo. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, which Essex County is another Jeff Lemire book. There's a street where some people live on, and it's called Gideon Place. Obviously, he's the author of Gideon Falls. So there are some Jeff Lemire thrown in, Easter eggs in there for people who are kind of like, oh, it's kind of neat. So overall, this is, before I finish, the one thing I would say is, like, when I do read some of his stuff, it is, again, the art it's different. It's a different style of art. It's not clean lines. It's very unique to him. And so when people are looking at his books, you might be like, oh, this is kind of really bizarre. But the themes in those books are very heartfelt, and you can understand and relatable, and those translate into this show. So I'm just loving this, to be very honest with you. And the fact that I have 3 episodes left is exciting for me, but it's also kind of sad and bittersweet because I would like more. So that's where I'm at. I'm really enjoying the show. And if people can get past the very real world implications of like a pandemic where people are actually wearing masks, it's part of the show. It's not exploitative to what's happening right now.
Andre, thoughts?
Yeah. So I guess the my esteemed colleagues covered most of it. I think the things I liked the most about it, I did like the narrator, and I thought visually it was really well done, but it is very different. The pacing and stuff is very different than the comic book, and stuff. And I will say, watching the first episode especially, when I'm watching things, I'm trying to see who their intended audience is. And I think they have a split with who they intend their audience to be, because it's very serious things are going on and stuff. And it's very, I don't want to say dark, but it's not, I wouldn't say kid friendly, maybe young adult friendly.
Yeah. The father-son thing, like, that's
and then when they get into more of Gus being raised in the forest, it then almost goes into a very childlike show. But I don't know, like, this was a Vertigo title, so this was not a title that we would have been recommending to kids, nor kids be buying. So I don't know who the intended audience is for the 2 episodes in. I will say the pacing on the 2 episodes really threw me off as well. They did feel at moments too long, and I think might sound like a juxtaposition, but I think it's because for all the information they were giving, they weren't giving you any information. It was either I wanted more of just how Gus was being raised and not anything of the other stuff, or I wanted more of the other stuff. And since you were glazing over what Gus being raised, there was that. So after the 2 episodes in, I was just like, I was thinking, what would I have liked to have seen it being shot? And I think I would have almost preferred it if they started after the first episode with the narrator and spliced in the 3 characters and give them each their moments spread out, because it was just like, I really did find the lady in the zoo interesting, but she's not introduced into the 2nd episode, so you don't really get a lot. Then you flash back to the doctor who the show starts on. So maybe if they had did the back to back, or flipping, I would have found the pacing better. It leaves a lot of questions that I hope that they do answer later on in the series, because one of my big pet peeves in all of these shows is, I know they want to make a comparison and they want to make a point, and they use, like, science fiction's always, a backdrop or dystopian futures or apocalyptic futures in order to make a point. But a lot of times, like, I know the point isn't the plague and how the plague came, or how the zombies came, or how anything changed, or why these hybrids are here. I know that's not the point. But after so much time, it's really frustrating if you never really kind of find out. If they just say, oh, this is it, it just is, right? And I know that's a storytelling tool, but at a certain point, I'm like, just put a little bit more thought. I'm going to buy whatever you tell me. Just get me to some reason or whatever, so that I can myself can move past it and stuff. Like, one of the things that you really got to be concerned with is 11 years have passed since this thing has happened, and if every kid is born a hybrid, then we're doomed, right? Because it seems that people are hunting these hybrids and doing bad things to them. So but again, we do not know, other than seeing the kid who lives in the lodge and says, oh, he's one of the last normal ones. Right. So yes, hopefully the show gets around to answering that.
Unless Netflix cancels it. But yeah, again.
Yeah. This is one.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go.
Again, the story is finished. So if you want to, go ahead and see where the Downies were inspired and what they're going to do with producers, the story has finished, concluded, and they have talked about where the sick is, which is what they call the virus. And for those who are not aware, but they do have an idea of how it concludes, and the story completes itself. The issue is, as we've already seen in the first few episodes, they're deviating from the comics. So it's just a matter of where they're going to set. So your point is valid, Andre, what they're going to do, because again, even though they have a template, they've clearly shown they're going a different direction. So how are they going to do it? But the theme is very clear in this show already. It's father-son relationships, which is relationships are that's what it is. It's a nurturing, whether it's by birth or whether by picking up a kid randomly and loving him and looking out for him. So that's
which we don't recommend, by the way, to people who are out there. We don't
yes.
recommend
unless there's a panini and you find a guy that likes candy and you have to take him and like that's fine. But other than that, that's the thing. 2 strong male characters who are looking out for their sons. And that's something that doesn't necessarily happen in media. It's usually the strong female character who has a motherly nature and look after.
I don't know. I think we've almost gotten too much of the other hand. Look, we got Mandalorian doing that, right? Then we've got Star Wars: The Bad Batch doing that with the.
But again,
more and more.
But you would argue that the Mandalorian doesn't do it well. You've argued it doesn't do it well. So like just because it's done doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. Yep. So and the Bad Batch only you and I are watching it, so we can't count that either because
I'm watching it.
Okay, three
I like,
of us.
I like it. I like it.
It's not the masses. Like the amount of exposure this Netflix show will get, it will dwarf pretty much anyone who watches The Bad Batch. So this is a small indie band, Andre, that we like, that only a few people know about. They're not playing out MSG, so that's the difference between this and Sweet Tooth. So I think, yeah. So sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, and I think that's the thing about the show is that yes, shows can talk about it, but again, you gave 2 examples in the same universe, which is Star Wars.
Well, I could go on if you like, but that's not the focus of our little.
Yeah, but I think like that's the thing. Like people are that's the route they're going at in the show, and that's the crux of this comic. If Jeff Lemire, it's safe to say, reading the full series and watching the TV show, there's a path, and that's the path it's taking. Rob, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, we often do, when these shows come out on Friday, we record on Sundays. And so we don't have an opportunity to review a full series. We only get to usually do 1 or 2 episodes, right? Of like a Netflix drop, like we did with Jupiter's Legacy. And so I think that, the concerns that Andre has are legitimate. I know that, I don't know how far, if you've continued watching it or not. I think that those pacing issues are completely resolved. Any of the concerns that you may have about the story. My point being is that it's hard when we're this type of show does not lend itself well to a review of the first 2 episodes. I think this is one of those shows, like in Jupiter's Legacy, what you see is what you get. If you watch the first 2 episodes, you're pretty certain it's just going to be rinse, cycle, repeat for the remaining 6 episodes. In this series, having the benefit of watching ahead, I can now say that what you get in the first 2 episodes is not rinse, cycle, repeat. Yeah. And so I think that this show probably benefits from a full viewing of all 8 episodes for a review, as opposed to just doing the first 2. Because I think that a lot of your concerns or points are definitely addressed in future episodes. My question to you guys, though, is that, and again, I don't know if Andre, if you watch more, just the first 2, but I know that John and Stu have a little bit. As somebody who has never read the comic, because it diverts so heavily from the source material, do you think it's worthwhile as somebody like me who will just watch this show to pick up the comic? Or do you think, like, sometimes the source material, you may not enjoy it as much because you've been so enamored with the movie or the television show, and other times it's like, well, it's so interchangeable, you can easily pick it up and still enjoy it. There's more to enjoy. So my question to you guys would be, do you think it's something people like me should be picking up to read following the series?
I think, yeah, that's a big commitment. I think the comic is very thoughtful in the way that Jeff Lemire kind of puts the characters' relationship as Gus and Tommy. I always it's a very, like you said, it's an old man Logan-y feel, because it's a crotchety old man who's fighting off all these people all the time, and he gets hurt all the time. And he delves into the darkness of like the tropes of what would happen during a panini anyways. It's like things happen, the typical, like, bad things that happens. And what juxtaposes that is the sweetness and the naivete of Gus as he goes through the world. It's like things are really bad, and he's just like, how is the bright part of this? And like Jeff puts the darkest things he can kind of put together and then throws Gus in it. And I don't know whether the show's going to do it, because there's some bad things that happen in the TV show, but compared to the comic, in like issue 3, like they go to at a house and you're like, oh, this is what's happening already. So I think, like, like if you can get through that, you can get through the rest of the show, because it's, again, a lot of the tropes of what you'd see in a pandemic or like of a zombie show, like as is there. It's just, they're not zombies, they're just humans being bad, and it's just, you just have to deal with it. So I think that it's worth the read because the comic is very well done, but it is so drastically different. It's kind of the debate you'd have with The Boys TV show versus The Boys the comic. Like, they're drastically, in terms of like some of the sexual stuff is not there. Like, Andre, you've read The Boys, like some of it, but like a lot of the very sexual nature of it is alluded in the TV show. But in the book, they go there, like really go deep, and they're like, well, it's a comic book, so we can just
no pun intended.
Yeah. So like it is different. And your sensibilities, if you're not interested in that, the book is not what you want. It still has its merits and moments, but it is very much darker and very much, it goes farther for this for sometimes, and I question the reasons why it goes that far in the boys. And
But
Season
like you can
definitely
look
goes.
at like The Walking Dead, having read only half of those issues and then seeing the show, and I gave up after like season 6 or whatever, but it has the same idea, the same themes. They've diverged in terms of the character arcs. You know, some characters are still in existence or in the book when they were killed off in the show, and vice versa. But so that I think is, it holds the same DNA. It seems though in this show, this is much more, like I said, wholesome and palatable then as a storytelling device. Is that?
I think for you, Rob, I think you would enjoy the comic book, and I think you would be able to differentiate the two. It would almost seem like they are two separate pieces, and I do know your like. I think you would enjoy it. I don't know if it is a book that if the average person who enjoys the just the television show would say, "Oh wow, I want more of the same, so let me read the comic," because it isn't. Like I said, it is tonally different, it is visually different and stuff. I just think you'd have to know what genres you like, and you got to be like kind of willing to accept the change and be open to the change. So in a way, I think it's great that I hope that this series puts his name on the map, because he's such a great writer, and comic writers know how great he is. This guy can write anything and many different things at the same time, and he's fantastic. But maybe this will get out there even further than his reach is now, and people will just be like, "Oh hey, it was based on his stuff, let's go out and get it." But I don't know if it is close enough for you to be like, yes, it's going to give me more of the same. It's going to give you more, but it's going to give you, like Stu said, it's different. It's different tonally and stuff. And yes, maybe the points, the main the themes are similar between the two, but definitely there is a difference, and it's what they chose. I just hope that, like I said, they maintain, and I hope if this show is popular and they try and do something more, I hope Jeff is part of that, and stuff like,
you'd rather have a Jeff Lemire world instead of a Mark Millar. You'd rather see Jeff's properties come.
I would, well, not only that, but I'm always like, it's about respecting the source material and respecting kind of those original creators, instead of just, them paying for it, handing it off, and then taking it in a totally different direction. Not saying that doesn't happen in a positive sometimes, but I think more often than not, when people adapt these things, they adapt it, they inject their things, and it loses something in that. To me, as somebody who would have consumed the originals and stuff, and I think we see it a lot in the big kind of sandbox universes, where all of a sudden you'll get like a different writer, or you get somebody who's writing a screenplay or an adaptation, and you're like, did they even read the original? Because how did they get to this? And then maybe it gets canceled or things, and you're like, wow, there's like 15 more books in that series, and they covered the first 3 barely, and they changed so much of it that's why it didn't work. Like, these books sold millions or whatever, right? I know the 2 books and TV are different, but I feel that happens a lot of times, that people miss the kind of the originality and the ownership and the magic that the original creator brings to it.
So,
especially Andre, if they're still there.
Yeah. To your point, Andre, I think, Rob, to your tastes, I would continue going through the books. I say, if your son, who is, let's say your son is 14, wants, like, I want to buy this YouTube comic. No. Like that, like, I think it's now you have to put it gradually as to a young adult, like 14, 15 wants to read it. No, don't give them that book, because the book is really delves into some mature adult subject matter. But that's what, Andre, you mentioned, like, this show is, they have hitting all the verticals. This is a show where they're like making it more cuter, making it more emotional, making it more palatable for the masses. Like that's what it is. So if you play this in the background, your 13-year-old kid wouldn't freak out going, what is going on? This is not The Road, which
Yeah.
Right.
like again, Jeff Lemire's book, there's a lot of similarities without me ruining. There's a lot of similarities with The Road and this book. Again, you're just like, oh yeah, The Road. Like, remember that movie of sweetness and fun? So if those who haven't seen it, it's a dark, dark ride. So I would say tonally, The Road is very much like Sweet Tooth the comic in the sense of like just the terribleness that humans can do to each other. But again, the whole thing about it is that you have to understand they are changing the show to make it more palatable for the masses, and the reviews are in and they support that. Like we all are positive, just like all the people from, we don't take that much grain of salt with Rotten Tomatoes, but it's like 97% right now. Like people are genuinely liking the show, but that's because of seeing it through a lens of making it more, inviting for people.
Well, and it's just different. It's something different. It's something different overall, right? But then something different tonally than what we've had in this past year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's also nice to watch a show where you don't need to do watch another video to tell you what happened before. So
Right.
it's nice to watch.
And
I don't have to watch the Loki, like what happened in Loki on Disney
the
Plus,
comic
and they're
cram to figure out everything that's going on. Yeah.
I don't need cue cards and flashcards to tell me who's this
Right.
character. As much as we like watching Easter eggs, and we're going to talk about Loki next week, it's nice not to need flashcards to figure out who's who again. So it's nice about a show that you can go in with no knowledge and be able to watch and enjoy it.
Can I say the one thing I was laughing at a lot is when he turns off, I think was it Tommy or Jeopard? He turns off the lights and you can see
his eyes glowing.
And his eyes are glowing and he's like, oh shit. He goes, oh, I forgot you're nocturnal. And I was
so
like,
that's
deer in
cool
headlights.
that
It
they can
made
add
me
that.
laugh. Like I was just like, oh, it's just something. It was. I never even thought of it before going into like watching it until that happened, and I was like, oh my god, that's just amazing.
Yeah. And that's not in the comic because you can't achieve that visually in the comic with that same impact. My quick 2 cents is I really did enjoy reading the comic before seeing this, and when things kind of do this divergent, I generally enjoy reading or diving into the original source and then doing the thing after. So
my hypothesis about the age, John, is that correct in terms
it's definitely a darker book, and like we mentioned before, the art style is not for everybody, unfortunately. So it does take you a little bit to get used to.
Well, I think that's why it's for older folks.
Yeah,
right?
but it might have served its purpose, as in like this comic can exist in this plane and it can be adapted into a TV show because the artwork isn't exactly like TV show now. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out the book, especially you, Rob. And it's really what you would call a page turner. You really want to see what happens next, and you can probably fly through 40 issues pretty fast, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad though that Andre mentioned about how Jeff Lemire is just like he's constant. This guy, I mean, I know that he's married. I think he's got a kid or so. I don't know where he finds the time to not only he writes a whole ton of shit, and he's also illustrating his own stuff. Like this guy is a hustler. He is constantly writing. He's got a bunch of books coming out this year. Like when he ended Gideon Falls, he after 27 issues, he put this whole like essay out. Why I'm ending. I needed to take a break. I have so much going on. He goes, but here's what I have coming up. And you're like, that's your break? Like, what
it wasn't like it ended poorly or it felt rushed. It felt like that was where it was going to end, right? Like, he could do more, but here's a bow on it. Here you go. Right.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like the best stories are left with you wanting more. Right. And like, I'm a big fan of his Royal City. It was 14 issues. And I was like crushed when he was ending it. I was like, come on, man. It's like, but when you read it and you finish it, you're like, oh, it's one story set in this time. And we don't need to like keep going to the well and keep pushing it and pulling and getting more out of it. Right. Like we've used it, pulling the toffee. You don't need to do that. It's all in a nice little wrap package. So you're right. But yeah, man, this guy is working all the time. So
shout outs quickly as we start wrapping things up. Adil Attar, who plays Dr. Singh.
Yeah.
Like I know he's only in a little bit in 1 and 2, but man, as the show gets forward, he does an incredible job. So if you haven't seen, if you're gonna watch more, he's really good. He does a really good job, and he's one of those just like Anus or Naso. He's one of those other that guys. Like he's like, oh, I've seen him in a lot of things. Like he's just really well done. So I'm happy. And to Rob's point before, New Zealand is like, oh, Yosemite. No, it's New Zealand, and they definitely maximize New Zealand because it's as Rob was saying, the aesthetics of the look of the show. It's again the nature and the vibrant colors of being outdoors, and then juxtaposing by like a little bit of darkness of the indoor world. It does really good to show that the difference between light and dark and day and night. So hopefully they continue to use New Zealand and they don't end up using the 3D visual wall, the source, or what they do in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, no more green screen.
Yeah, green screen. Well, that's the new green screen, right? So,
but honestly, the James Brolin narration as you go on, it really fits, and it for me it heightens that sense of wonder and just amazingness throughout the you can tell he's putting some inflection in his voice, and he's making himself probably a lot older sounding than what he is. But man, I was just blown away. Loved it.
And those of you who know, those of you who read ahead already know who James Brolin is, but he's great. So without ruining it, but you can only put your fingers as to who he's playing. But any other final thoughts before we move on to the next topic, John? Any other final thoughts on Sweet Tooth before we move on?
No, it was a pleasant surprise. I actually didn't think I would dig this as much, and like the guys have mentioned, everything from Jeff Lemire that I've read, even though when I looked at it, I was like, I don't know if I can get into it, but every time I've read it, it's always been good. So like this guy is just firing on all cylinders. So definitely highly recommend it. I will shout out that one scene where Big Man, he like drops the garbage, and then Gus is like, oh yeah, you can't do this, they'll follow the trail. And then he's like, okay, and he just chucks it down the valley, and the kid's like, okay, I'll be right back. And then he kind of like grabs all the other garbage from his pocket and just whips it out. I just thought that was it was great that he can play this menacing character and then do like funny stuff, like just the look on his face, and then he just like just the way he does it, he's doing a great job. So I think the cast overall, just all of them are really good.
Rob?
Yeah, I would just watch it, and if you have a difficult time getting through the first 2 episodes because of how real it currently feels with things, I assure you that the payoff as you slingshot around the moon is well worth it. It is tough. I feel bad for them. It is tough dealing with a pandemic while we're dealing with a pandemic, and you're like, oh my God. But definitely it's worth the investment of your time.
Andre?
So I only watched the 2 for this, and I didn't find, like what Rob was saying with the pandemic stuff, I didn't find that they weren't really hammering that. It's just a sickness befalls the earth. But I will say, it sounds like this is the type of show that benefits from it being Netflix, and you can watch it at your pace at the same time. And I will say, like, I don't know for myself, like if this was weekly television and I tuned in for the second episode and it left me where it was, I don't know if I would go back for 3 personally.
Yeah.
But now Rob's saying it changes at 3 and stuff. And I think this might be a problem. Either they need to address it with TV shows, and maybe they've got to make their first 2 episodes feel a little bit stronger if they want someone to come back. Not speaking in this show in general, but like I said, like if I've got to sit down and it doesn't kind of get firing until 3, or
because that was 2 hours. The first 2 episodes basically 2 hours.
Yeah,
right. So you watched a movie. You watched a movie, and
I
didn't have
another hour to give this. At that time, but I guess, like I said, it is good. It's different. But it didn't grab me and make me go, yeah, I need to stay up and watch another episode. I'm like, I'm kind of, there. So I'm glad that all of you watched, and it sounds like it does change and the pacing gets a little bit better. But to me, like I said, it really, if this is how, well, I don't want to say if, like it's a new thing, but it seems like this is how TV is going to be going, and stuff. It's sometimes hard to have a 3-hour block or whatever to go, or that they even expect you say, oh, we're going to do a couple things, but we're going to really get going at the 3-hour mark. again, I use the analogy, if it was a book and the first couple chapters haven't hit it yet, I don't want to get halfway through the book before it's like, okay, here we go, so I will give the next episode a try and see, but I
think, Andre,
I hope it gets
Andre, to your point, they have the benefits, which is Netflix, which they release everything right off the bat. So going into it that Netflix is going to release everything, you can format your show accordingly and basically plan that way. I know you mentioned before, if it's not the first two shows, it's different for network, it's different for streaming. So these are the rules they play. Like if you look already, shows have pivoted, whether it's Disney Plus and like WandaVision, we're going to the first 3 ones because it's not going to hook you if you watch the first 2. So they made The Boys, it's like the first 3 episodes. So I think people are recognizing that if it's a weekly thing, you got to put maybe more than 1 to get people involved, or it's not going to work. Depending on how strong the property is. I think Loki is not going to do more than 1 because I think they believe in it. So it just speaks to the how far you got to wade in the pool. Loki is like, yeah, you don't need more than 1. We're going to give you just 1 episode, and then it's going to be weekly. And for WandaVision, they need more, just like The Boys needed more. And for Sweet Tooth, it's like, we're just drop it all at once. So it varies from, this is going to be the new normal. It's not like a network show where it's like they have to do the best show possible because, to your point, Andre, I'm not going to watch it next week. But again, there's just different budgets for TV than there are for streaming because they get revenue for commercials and all the other stuff. So that is always the difference. Even though, Jupiter's Legacy and this show probably costs a ton, it is different than what a network TV show is. So it's tiers. Before we jump over, as we talked before, Team Downey, Robert Downey Jr. and Susan Downey produce it. It's a really good show. I recommend watching it too. But and Robert Downey usually produces and he stars in it. Do you think that he's going to do a small cameo role in this, or you think he's going to stay out?
I think it's going to stay out. Can I ask a quick question, Stu? Though, because you and Rob have probably watched all of them. So this is I think the 3rd Vertigo series to get a TV treatment. So we have Preacher and Lucifer. Mm-hmm. Is this your favorite of the 3, or I haven't watched Lucifer, so I don't know. Preacher didn't quite catch me.
Lucifer's on the bottom of the list because it's not even anywhere close to character themselves. So like I barely count it because it's just like, yeah, it's not.
Well, they had the Constantine show, which was Vertigo.
Yeah.
And then
so maybe 4, movies, I guess.
John, because The Losers got a movie and it unfortunately didn't capture the essence.
No, I think TV. I think Vertigo, when we were reading the series and the series was at its highest point, we definitely would have seen TV show as the most logical progression because some of them were long running. Like Why Last Man's coming up. So I was just curious if this was maybe the best done one so far.
Well, don't forget though, you had Lucifer. And then even if you did Constantine, were both network television shows. Mm-hmm. While Lucifer has now been, the last 2 seasons have been on Netflix, it was originally 22 episodes or whatever on Fox, right? So, is much different. Now, Preacher went the Walking Dead route where I think they only did 10 or 12 episodes and they were able to push the boundaries. And cable television in the US is vastly different than cable television in Canada, right? So you're able to push those boundaries a little bit on networks like AMC or whatnot, and then even more so on HBO. But so I agree with you, John.
NBC.
Was it NBC? Was Lucifer?
NBC is Lucifer is Fox.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, Lucifer's Fox, Constantine was NBC. Yeah. But so at any rate, I gave up watching Preacher after maybe the first season. It just didn't hook me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have any interest in watching Lucifer, to be honest with you, because I really kind of thought it was only going to be for 1 season. Now we're into season 5 on Netflix. So for me, Sweet Tooth for me is the best adaptation that I've
But that
seen.
could also be, had you read Preacher before?
I read a little bit of it, but it wasn't. But it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. It was just like, okay, cool. And I do have like a general understanding of some of these shows. If I haven't read like the full series, I've read a few of the issues, but at the time, it could also have been when it came out and what I was doing at the time, right? And I've always said this: time is precious. If you want me to invest my time into certain aspects, they have to hook me. And Preacher was good, but it wasn't it didn't get me enough to want to tune into season 2 when it came out on AMC.
I think for me, a lot of times why I don't follow these shows after a certain point is because if I've read the series already and the show isn't adding anything or isn't as good, I'm like, I know it and I've got the better version, so I don't have to continue watching it unless the portrayal is so good. You know what I mean? Especially like you said, it's a TV series. Maybe you check in for a movie. Oh, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, but to devote a full season and then they're like, wow, this isn't even close to as good as the comic book was. Why am I going to continue? That's for me anyways. I'm super more critical and stuff like that, but
John, to your point, if you look at the shows, I think Constantine, iZombie, Lucifer.
Yeah, iZombie was another one. Yeah,
and then now Sweet Tooth are the 5 kind of DC Vertigo titles that have kind of been on TV. I think that Preacher was a Seth Rogen produced show with just like The Boys and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like everyone's on. He likes Seth Rogen very much likes the properties, and he goes full in. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think Dominic Cooper did a really good job in it. I
like that casting. I think the other cast didn't catch me for some reason.
It's Preacher was
where
fine.
Sweet Tooth, the entire cast, I'm really like, I want to see more of these guys.
Preacher fell into the difficulty of being on AMC. Like if Preacher was on HBO Max, it's a different show and goes farther because it tried to go edgy and goes to the Preacher route without going that far. And I think that's the problem with it. And same with Constantine. NBC. I love Constantine. I love Matt Ryan, what he does for the character, but and it was done well, kind of fit the supernatural TV show niche that I missed in season 1 through 5. Like it very much felt like Supernatural back in the day with the OG Winchesters. But again, it was on NBC and it got canceled pretty quickly because it was just too much. I think these shows would all benefit from the darker universe, which is HBO Max on Prestige and cutting it down. I think iZombie is the one example where it was like a traditional TV show, and shout outs to Raul Koholi. Like again, it's a good show, but it didn't really feel like a comic book show. Like I wouldn't have known that it was a comic book show till someone else would told me. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But it was a very traditional like TV show, and it just went on. Just like for example with Lucifer. Lucifer just kind of subtitling like, here's just Lucifer Morningstar and he lives in LA and he has a bar. Like that's the best stuff they took from the series, and now we're gonna make a police procedural show. I'm like, oh, this is not fun at all. Like you want him to be like the concierge of LA who deals with superheroes and deals with all this stuff, and like he is constantly kind of in the middle, and he's like it's not interested in hell. So that's the more of the character I want to see, rather than like this guy going through LA and helping a police officer solve crimes. Like that is not what I want to see. So again, Sweet Tooth, I haven't finished it, so we can put a pin on it. But like we'll see. Again, it's up there in terms of the adjustments. But again, all these shows, it's either you adjust it to make it more family friendly, which Sweet Tooth is doing, or it goes to totally neutered, because some of the subject matter for vertical titles, in essence, is a lot of realness, a lot of seriousness. It's a book that you kind of be able to go outside of the comic book tropes. So in terms of like, you have to have superheroes. So, it's different. But yeah, that's the 2 cents. So yeah. Okay, let's jump into Andre. I've spoken. What do you got to say? What do you got for us?
All right. So I have spoken today. I'm going a little bit different. One of my favorite games, game that Rob Gadet probably played all of 5 minutes of, because he took an arrow to the knee.
I know what game that you're talking about.
And he stopped his adventure right there. Has finally come out in its closest form to an RPG, and we've got the Elder Scrolls, the Call to Arms, based on the wonderful game series and the last iteration, which was Skyrim. So this is a tabletop miniatures game. Okay, so you get to adventure by yourself. So we know if you guys are at home right now currently, and there's unfortunately, well, maybe a couple weeks will be let out. You can play solo, you can play co-op with a friend, or you can battle a friend with game NPCs and adversaries that will hinder both of you. Very cool game. It's got its own dice system. They've got all the characters. You got the storm cloaks in there. You've got the Drogar, you know, those zombie looking things. This particular thing's got the core game plus some rules plus 5 pre-made characters, but you can buy other expansion modules, game cards, as well as all those cool figures. They even have an adventure back where you can pick any of like the Khajiits and stuff like that. So really cool. I really love the video game. I can't wait to dive into this. It's getting good reviews. We just got it all in the store. So if you want to check out a tabletop version of Skyrim to play by yourself or with a friend, I think you can play up to, I think they say right now it's 2 players, but I'm sure they're going to do some type of arena mode with all the stuff out there. But very, very cool. The miniatures, there's no minis in here. There's tokens, but the miniatures are plastic and resin. Really nice and really easy to assemble. So Skyrim, this is the Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. Looking forward to it, and I think you guys will dig it.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So as we move to the next topic, we're going to jump towards discussing comic book series this year that debuted in 2021. Things you should check out, recommendations. So John, what's the comic that debuted this year in our Lord 2021 that you'd recommend to the kiddies and people at home to check out?
Yeah. So I'm going pretty recent. So it only came out in May, so you can jump on this book pretty easily and pretty quickly. And that's Wonder Girl #1 by Joelle Jones. I think I don't know if that's pronounced correctly or not. You typically see her on Catwoman and a bunch of other books. So she is writing and doing the art for the book. And it looks incredible. So Yara Flores is the new quote unquote Brazilian Wonder Woman. So an actual Amazonian Wonder Woman from the actual Amazon is what they toted at, and created and written by female creators. So that's pretty cool. And she did appear in DC's Future State crossover 2 issues that happened during the early part of this pandemic. You don't actually need to read those if you don't want. It's kind of like an alternate possible future. And then she did have a panel appearance in the Death Metal #7 that kind of introduced her into the bigger comic continuity. So if you're a speculator, get that Future State #1 and get that Death Metal #7. But if you want to read a really good book, then definitely pick this up. And it's kind of her debut, so her powers have kind of activated. So you're on the ground floor. You're going to learn how she becomes, who she becomes, and they've got a really cool element is once she's activated, there's a bunch of different parties interested in, and have kind of sensed the presence of her coming into her powers. So you have the Amazonians, and you also have this splinter faction of the Amazonians who've kind of went to this other extreme, and then you have the kind of like the Greek god characters, all interested in what this girl is up to. So I'm down for a new character spinning off, and especially a new strong female character. Definitely always interested. And this art, the style of the book is phenomenal. So I can't recommend this one enough. And I'm looking forward to the new issues coming out. And you don't really need to know anything. The issue does a really good job of covering everything. So even if you're not a DC guy, you can pick this up and enjoy it. When you even see the cover, you'll be like, okay, this looks interesting. So we've got lots of copies at the shop. So kind of dual purpose that I've got it, and I want people to read this book.
Yeah, highly recommend this book. I'm seconding it. This book I think is going to hit with anybody who's a fan of like the old guard. It's got some nice vibes to that, like throwback, like John said, the different factions that are involved with her. It's got that feel of there's a sense of kind of not nostalgia, but there's a sense of history and a sense of something is like a prophecy going on. So it was really, really good. Definitely.
Yeah, and you're along with her. She's going to try and find out her history and things like that. So it's really cool.
Awesome. Okay, Rob, what do you got for us?
Well, I'm going on a little bit of a weird pick here, and I'm gonna. Some people might just roll their eyes and say and start to fast forward through this portion. No. But I'm going with Batman Fortnite comic 0 Points, the 6-issue miniseries. I believe that they're into issue 4, issue 5. I think comes out the week after next. Yeah. So this is an interesting. I'm just going to say it's written by Christos Gage and art by Riley Brown. So not huge names, but they are making their mark. Though you may be like, oh man, a tie into a video game. Listen, it's the most popular video game for the last number of years. And what happens is essentially Batman gets sucked into the 0 Point, which is the Fortnite world. And why this is important is that this actually unlocks, if people have been playing the video game, it unlocks, like, it gives an explanation as what is this island. Like, for those who don't know, Fortnite is a battle royale game. You have 100 people. You have to survive to be number one. If you get killed, you looped into a new game, and off you go. It's rinse, recycle, repeat. I'm using that phrase about 9 times today. But this comic explains, why is this happening? What's going on? And so you have the world's greatest detective is thrown into this world and needs to uncover a way to get out. And in doing so is uncovering and unlocking the secrets of the actual game itself, like to the actual lore of the game. And this is canon to the game. And you have situations arise where Batman's doing quite well, and whatever forces are trying to stop him start throwing in other characters. And in a most recent episode, without getting into spoilers, that Batman and Snake Eyes face off against each other, and you've got a battle of these two, like, top of their game martial artists, fighting each other for supremacy. So as much as it's a kind of like a weird thing, like, well, Batman with his game, it actually kind of makes sense. The book is probably a lot better than what it deserves to be. It is really well written. And even if you're not a big fan of Fortnite, the mystery unraveling that happens will hook you. So I would definitely recommend Batman Fortnite crossover called 0 Point. Again, we're 4 issues into a 6-issue miniseries. Go out and grab it. It's a really good book.
And the great thing about this series is all the different people that have been calling the store, have been buying it from our website. This is a potential book to reach so many new comic book readers just because of that tie into Fortnite. So anything getting kids to take 5 minutes to read that comic and say, oh, I kind of like comics, I think it's going to hit. This is probably going to be the biggest introduction of kids to comics than I can think of in the past. How many years, John? Like what have they done that's reached this many people?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the reason people I wonder why. The reason being is that these issues were coming out with these digital codes that the kids or players, could unlock to get an item from that you could use, whether it was a skin, like a character, or something they could use. So my son really wanted these, and I've not been bullish and hidden the fact that he hates comic books because I like them. Because I like them so much, he detests. Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to like anything that you like, right? So one day he'll turn around, but he has been reading it because I said, if you want this stuff, then you need to part of your reading, and he has been enjoying it. And his friends who are getting into it because they wanted the special codes are enjoying the comic. So to Andre's point, they're hooking them with an item, and then they're getting sucked into the story and the idea. And for them to understand that this world is bigger than this game that they're playing on a daily basis. There's something actually happening that's causing this. For them, it's world building. It. So I agree. It's really good for new readers to get into.
And frankly, as parents at home who are trying to get their kids off screens, anytime you can read a book and that's not lit up by LED lights is a plus. So for all the parents out there who wants to get their kids to read something that isn't on a tablet because they're staring at screens all day, traditional books, the feel of paper is still always the right way to go, whether it's this or an Archie or even Benny Veronica classic comics. So whatever it is, get out there. Andre, what do you have for us?
All right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit because the book series that I'm enjoying the most for 2021, and it's a brand new creative team on this book, and legit, I'm surprised that they didn't renumber it as a number one, because both Marvel and DC do this quite often. But you've heard me talk about it before. It's the new Nightwing Story Arc by Tom Taylor. He picked up the book at issue 78. They're currently on issue 80. And oh my God, by the first issue, hook, line, sinker, he's written some great stuff with the Injustice series and stuff. But me reading his take on Nightwing is just fantastic. We've talking a lot this podcast about things being uplifting and light. And that's exactly what this book is. This book is a bright, fun book, return to Nightwing, but there is a little bit of a darker tone to it. But the initial premise is, if you guys don't know, Alfred died about 6-7 months ago in the Batman comic, and he basically left all his wealth to Dick Grayson. So Dick Grayson finally gets the last will and testament, and he's got this lovely letter from Alfred. He says, I know you're going to do wonders with this money. And then all of a sudden you've got Nightwing now in Bloodhaven, which is his adoptive home. He's like, okay, how can I be better and do more than just being this this costume vigilante? So yeah, very, very great start. We've got Batgirl making an appearance in there, and stuff, and it's just fantastically written. They've introduced new characters and brought in characters from his past, but it's just such a great starting point. It's got such great potential, and I love how he's writing this gives me faith, because he's taking over and bringing out a book based on the new Superman, which is Jonathan Kent. And at first I didn't want to see this book, but now that I know that it's going to be written by him and I've seen what he can do on Nightwing, I'm really looking forward to that. So we've got copies of the book, mostly only second prints because it did sell fast, but the covers on all the first prints and second prints are different enough, and they're fantastic, super creative. I think this is going to be a golden age of Nightwing. Like way back in the day when we first opened, Nightwing was selling tons with Tony Daniel art and stuff, and it was wicked. I think this has the potential to get Nightwing right back up there, because he's such a great character, and he's, I don't want to say underutilized, but I think he's underpurchased. Not everybody collects this, but I think this is a Bat title that you need to read. It's just that good.
Awesome. Thank you, Andre. As we're wrapping up, we have a little bit of time to talk about Robin, my favorite show, Jupiter's Legacy, the show that we can't wait to watch, season 2.
Wait, breaking news! Jupiter's Legacy has been canceled. No, season 2.
So let's just really jump into that. It goes without saying the show was canceled, even though it's high in ratings. Allegedly, the show cost $200 million to produce. This show was purchased, all of Mark Millar's properties, for about anywhere 50 to 100 million from Netflix. Bought all of Mark Millar's properties. We talked before about what he brought to the table, but quickly as we go around, are you truly surprised, or is it just the money that people is why they're canceling it, or what are your thoughts, John? Or too much saturation? Like, what is your thought process between why they canceled this show?
I feel like they jumped the gun. They didn't give it much of a chance. Like, I don't know, when did we cover it? We only covered it a couple weeks ago, it feels like.
It came out May, early part of May.
And they already pulled the plug on it. Like I can't pinpoint the reason, because I didn't watch the whole thing.
Well, there you go.
I did.
There you go. That's the reason.
Maybe it is that. Maybe it is the fact that they dropped it all at once and people didn't watch it all that week. Like I watched maybe halfway through, like episode 4 or 5, and I didn't mind it. But I think it's a real shame to pull the plug that soon, and all these people, like, as much as we
that they dragged it on way too much, because in the comic
the pacing and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it sucks. Like we're back. Like it goes back to that. Remember that age that TV shows were getting one season and getting canceled. Like, so you'd have these high concept shows and we'd really enjoy them, and then they'd be like pulled out. Like they wouldn't even get a chance to grow. So a lot of these shows, like sometimes, especially if you invest into a new lead, they need time to grow. Like if you go back and watch some of your favorite shows, the first season sometimes is kind of rough because they're finding their footing. So it's a shame that all these people that worked on the project and all that kind of stuff just were like, whoop, you don't even get to enjoy your limelight for a little while.
I think it's a little bit different, John, because this has a blueprint. This has like a comic that tells you what to do, and when you deviate so much from it, when you're like, oh, you're really taking your time, like Andre mentioned. You got hooked in the first
comic
episodes, and then you're like, oh, they're not even through like issue 2 and full season. You're like, this is rough. Like this is really, they dragged it out.
Yeah. So they had the comic book, like you're exactly right. They had the comic book blueprint. They knew which of those series sold, so they could have selectively removed things. Because the most popular one was the Jupiter's Legacy series, which was featured the younger kids taking over and not listening to the parents. So they probably should have gotten more straight to the point. And then the follow-up series, or the series that wasn't as popular, was the throw back to the past of the older heroes, which people didn't seem to gravitate to. So they did. Yeah, you're exactly right. They had a template and they could have fished out what they wanted. Maybe they were too cocky and were like, we can spread this out. Because to my understanding, you guys watched the whole first season. It felt like more of a setup, right? A lot of people were like,
it was as
once
if
I
they
finished
were
the first
setting
season,
up a tournament of you could
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about, and then they never went to the tournament. Somehow
Yeah,
there was some sort of
yeah.
combat, John. I don't know if you
Yeah,
heard.
yeah.
that
So
mortality was
this is
involved,
exactly
and they never got there.
yeah, this is exactly Andre's point too as well. You know the format. You know you have to catch people, especially that first episode. I think all of us unanimously in our review were like the first episode was really rough. Like you got to get people. Maybe that's why no one watched like me the second half of it. Or Andre I think Andre stopped at one episode. Well, great for him. He didn't invest all this time into a show that ultimately was going to get canceled. But who knows? Maybe you'll see it picked up by another network. But overall, I guess I'm not
Netflix owns it.
surprised.
I
Yeah.
think they own it. So I don't know if they farm it out to another streaming service.
Yeah.
If it
So
costs
so
$200
overall,
million to produce, and the reviews of it were like most people, fans and whatnot, the critics' reviews were bombing. That it was just so poorly reviewed critically. But then the fans watching it really liked it. But again, I think right now and Rob mentioned at the beginning, that show is so much on brand with everything else on TV. It's not like Sweet Tooth, which is so different. And the tone and this show of like, what's it? Great power comes great responsibility. It's essentially what that show is about. And it's just like, should you control world government, and should we be involved in this? And it was just heavy and boring. And it was like them talking about a Senate again. It's like proclamation, Rule Order 3. It's like, this is what we don't want to see in Star Wars. So in the Senate. So it, I think it missed its mark a lot.
yeah. So not surprised. I'm surprised that they announced it so soon though. They didn't even get these actors and actresses and people working on the project
Netflix
a little time to book their next gig or something. I don't know.
Somehow, like Jupiter's Legacy spent more money than on par as the first season of The Witcher, and The Witcher looks 1,000 times better.
Oh man,
I was like, that's like, $200 million. It's like, what? I guess a lot of CGI and a lot of stuff they spent, and a lot of the costume buffing for Josh Duhamel. But I don't know, Rob, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that it's not getting a second season. I'm kind of glad in some ways because I was thoroughly let down with the show. And while I agree with John saying, wow, you've pulled the plug 3.5 weeks after a release, it is quite unheard of. I think that's very telling as to the numbers of those who were watching it and then the reviews. If people start watching the first couple episodes and then they drop and they don't go back to it, listen, Netflix controls, their algorithms know everything in what you're doing, including your swiping past the title and this and that. They know. So, I one of the things we had talked about when we did the review a few weeks ago was that it just looked poor in terms of like its special effects and the flying and the landing. And it's not to take away, this is not me, trashing the CW shows, but it looked like a ripoff of a CW show or the early CW shows where they were using a lot of wire work to do stuff. You look at some of the CW shows that are on now and you're like, it actually looks a lot better than what Jupiter's Legacy was. That $200 million price tag is likely because it filmed in Toronto and they had to pay for hotels. The Witcher, I think, filmed in Prague, and I'm sure that's much cheaper out there.
And they just slept on the floor.
Right, in barns. I just, you know what? I think this is also, for me, and you put the spin out there. Mark Miller is like, no. This is kind of always, we're going to do the spin off with Super Crooks and this and that. I think that this might be an interesting reflection on the properties that Miller had signed over. They canceled production on The Magicians. They rebooted the production of it, so that's supposedly coming. This has me more concerned for any of these Netflix adaptations of his properties. I don't think they work well as TV shows based on what we've seen so far. And I just don't care if I see anything else that he is produced by Netflix from him. The story that I wanted the history of why they became these heroes is what I wanted to find out, their origin story. And you don't even get that until like the last episode. And why have I invested 8 episodes just to kind of, and you don't even really answer it. You kind of give me a bit of it and I don't really get it. So overall, I think it's probably the right call. I will be hard pressed to remember anything about this show except for how crappy I thought it was going into the future. It'd be one of these shows I'm like, I actually watched that. I don't remember. It's forgettable. It's forgettable. And I'll never get that 8 hours back.
Based on, before I get to Andre, internet research, half-baked internet research, a lot of people had basically Jupiter Legacy cost $200 million, including reshoots and everything. So again, I think they probably got a lot of notes and they're like, we'll fix it in post and we'll go back and fix it, as opposed to The Witcher, I think cost only $100 million for the same amount of episodes. But again, that might be just,
well, there's different things,
a lot
right?
of meddling involved or a lot of different things.
You have flying special effects and this and that. So
we don't know whether it's based on budgeting, as if like, oh, we're gonna reshoot stuff that happened again, as opposed to, you know.
Well, and they also had to shut down.
Yep.
They had to shut down last year because of when COVID first struck, right? So, you know, I get that. If people watched and continue to watch it, I'm sorry that you did. And hopefully you listened.
Well, that's the thing. You compare.
Hopefully you listened to everybody else's review when we did it.
Hopefully you listen to Andre and you bailed.
Well,
after
because
episode
we said when you have, I think it was Andre or I who said, when you have all of these shows coming out, you have to elevate your property to be competitive with everything else. And if you can't, listen, you can't be competitive with Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's up there. That's just the reality. You start raising the bar. You have to be at least somewhat competitive. You can never be one-on-one, but you have to be somewhat competitive. And if you can't, in this like dearth of comic book properties, then you're out. Well, and that's the reality.
So we talked before, Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier cost $150 for 6 episodes. But somehow that show didn't look like, again, it looked like it cost money, but 150, wow. And you look at Jupiter's Legacy, was 200, and the Jupiter's Legacy looked like a CW show. I was like, a lot of costs. But Andre, give us your insights. What do you think?
All right, so this is I've said this before, but Rob hit it on the head a little bit when he said he's got concerns for Mark Millar's properties going forward. I've said this before, and I never hold back my opinions, because I think people, you know, when they come to the shop, they want an honest opinion and stuff. And again, my opinion is not law, it's not gospel, whatever, but it's an opinion of a guy who's consumed comics all his life. Mark Millar, he can't write. Nobody buys a Mark Millar book just for Mark Millar. Mark Millar takes an idea from somewhere else, changes it, and then gets to work with the best artists in the industry. That's why his comics sell. On TV, you do not have the best actors, the best screenplay people, the best directors following up and making his property amazing, right? So you don't have variant covers to sell along with this book. You take any one of his series, and like I said, he's worked with what was Reborn, Greg Capullo, top of his game, John Romita Jr. on Kick-Ass, Olivier Coipel on The Magic Order, what else was Simone Bianchi on the Galaxy one. He works with the best that the comic industry has, and that doesn't translate. And nobody, like on Netflix, nobody cares. There's nothing to collect. So as a store, when we're buying a Mark Millar book, let's say we think, oh, we can only sell 10 copies of this. Oh crap, there's 5 variant covers. That 10 that we think we could sell, we might end up ordering 50, because some people are going to come in and buy all the covers. And that's why his stuff sells, right? So until they figure out a way to translate that into a show on Netflix, you're going to get a show that is based in some type of superhero or fantasy or sci-fi thing that he's ripping off of, but it isn't carried by the best other person doing the heavy lifting. And that's going to be, I think, probably part of that legacy of him until
Jupiter's.
Yeah, until they figure out, what to do, because none of his ideas are super original. like at all, nor is the execution of those ideas. So until you're, like you said, Rob, until somebody says, hey, we believe enough in this story, but we're going to throw enough money at it to make it compete with a Marvel or make it compete with a DC or a Warner Brothers or whatever, like even The Witcher, like you said, like, how did Jupiter's Legacy even spend more money than The Witcher? Just unreal.
But let me
You know what I
ask you
mean?
this though. Do you think maybe this is just actually reflective of that his material is best served as a movie as opposed to a show? That because, like you're saying, you have this idea and concept, 2.5 hour movie is easily digestible and it can be good as opposed to a drawn out 8-10 episode series.
No,
Because if you look at his movies, they've done quite well. People,
I think, Rob, I think it's the middle place. I think it's a limited series. I think they just have to go and it's like you can make a comic in 6 episodes and really honor it and have everything in it and just be like a one and done season rather than pulling a full Hobbit and dragging this out. Like Jupiter's Legacy.
look at all his movies though.
That Jupiter's Legacy season 1.
Jupiter's Legacy probably had one season.
Should have just been one season, and resulting in the death of Utopia, like Utopian or whatever, like right off the like midway during the series, and you're like, that's dropping the mic, and you're like, wow, we got to go this direction. But again, they cast Josh Duhamel, and it's like, well, he's an actor and he's big, and we should keep him around for a while. This is the difference between this show and like Game of Thrones, where they could have just said, we're gonna leave Sean Bean's an actor, we can just leave him alive for a bit longer, like let's just have him around. It's like, no, you have to move forward and kill people and move the story forward.
Spoiler alert.
But
I didn't say who Sean Bean was, but yeah, like that's the thing.
About the movies, some of his movies did well because of they got not unfortunately, sorry, I don't mean to be so negative about it, but top big name actors. Like look at Wanted, right? They got the big name actors. Look at
he had one big name actor in that movie, right? Like that's
okay.
I think
sorry,
it's the directors and the producers.
Yeah, directors and producers.
Like Kingsman.
But Kingsman's totally different than Secret Service.
Yep. Okay.
Wasn't Morgan Freeman also in Wanted though?
Yeah, but that's what was the one with the gun where they could spin the bullets?
That's Morgan Freeman.
That's
Angelina
Wanted.
Jolie,
that was
and
McAvoy.
Angelina Jolie and a dumb concept. Of course, that was going to do well, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is you're taking the producers and writers who are then taking his stuff and cherry picking the best out of that and making a 2-hour movie.
It's only good if you put the best, like Angelina Jolie's gonna. She brings people to the audience. Sure. You want to make Jupiter's Legacy a great movie. You put it in a movie and be like, oh look, Brad Pitt's the Utopian and Jennifer Aniston's his wife. People that couldn't give a shit about what that movie's about. They're in the door. So yes, it's gonna sell if it's that. But this proves that it's not like the concepts aren't there without all the icing and everything else. And those actors to me and those producers are exactly what the artist brings to his work.
Yeah, but I think the Josh Duhamel thing, it's like the actors. Like I think Josh Duhamel did a great job. I think the issue was that they just dragged this season out where they didn't finish anything. I read the comic. Mark Millar's comics like 6 comic books. 6 comics, and they did an entire like 8 hours and didn't finish one damn like book. It's like you're dragging this out. One book is one season. Like drawing this stuff where like we're gonna spend more time on the island of mysteriousness. I don't care about the island mysterious. Like get to the point. Like let's just push through to the best action scene stuff. Just the constant debates about like whether we should do this or whether we do that with the brother. I'm like wearing bad like makeup. I'm like, guys, you know what to do. Just push things along. And that's the thing where you mentioned before. It's like everyone now is like, we need to push this out to 6 seasons to get more. There's no syndication. There's no like you have to get 100 episodes anymore. Like just get it done. Do the best property you can, because we've said over and over, you only have a limited time to capture people. So whether it's Marvel now saying we're only doing 6 episodes, well, some of us would say we want more, but Falcon Winter Soldier, we got what we wanted. Some people hated it, some people loved it, some people like WandaVision for 9 episodes. The fact that they have that flexibility to do what the story dictates is what we want to hear, rather than we have to do 8 episodes, we have to do 12 episodes. Like we were forced to watch Daredevil 13 episodes. I guess it made sense in the beginning. We're gonna do 13 when you had to. That was what HBO was doing. But now what's a number? Like just if it's 5, do 5 episodes. Who cares? So I think that's the end of the day what the problem with the show is. Even if it was Brad Pitt did the entire 8 episode of this season, it's so bad because they drag it out. Brad Pitt couldn't have saved it. Like even if it was Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie as the two characters, nothing they could have done because it was just so long for no reason. So Rob, you look like you have something.
I know what are we on time wise?
We're fine. Just go.
No, it wasn't about this. Something just kind of broke, and I just was gonna.
Yeah, go for it.
So apparently, and this is just pure speculation, but apparently WB are pretty concerned about this new Batman movie, not only because it's dark, it's very dark, but apparently Bruce Wayne has mental health issues.
Which you should.
So apparently the scoop is that WB are very nervous and concerned about this movie being widely accepted. So I just thought, because we're on here live, this is something that we would be talking about in our chat offline. So quickly, I just thought I'd ask what your thoughts were.
So wait, you're telling me that nobody at the higher ups at WB didn't read the script beforehand?
Hey, Andre, it's WB. What have they ever done?
Well, Andre, but again, you have to remind yourself that just because the script comes in, it deviates. Like the original script in any movie, if you read it, is not always what's produced in that. But so the dailies would come in, and then like you say one thing, but on the day of the shoot, they might adjust or do something else.
Okay, but oh man, okay. So somebody pitches this idea and then leaves out that they're gonna have Batman have mental. What did you call it?
Mental health issues. I think what you have though, Andre, is that you have
crazy if they just slid that under the door.
Well, I think you have people at WB. We have to also remember was going through a massive state of fluctuation with different people running it because of the sale with AT&T and everything else like that. So, I'm sure the idea when they looked at it, we're like, okay, yeah, we can understand this. But I think when and this is pure speculation on my part, Matt Reeves submits it, the first cut or whatever, and they're like, oh, this is dark. Like, don't forget, they're looking at how do we sell toys? How do we sell merchandise? How do we do that if it's going to be like a hard 14A or bordering on rated R because of its dark and gritty tone? How do we make all this money in its merchandising, right? So maybe some of us are a bit more progressive and understanding of mental health issues than a lot of the majority of the population, and they're worried that maybe it's going to be off-putting to people. I don't know. This is, again, it just came out, like, it seems to be like on fire right now that this is the rumor and people are kind of talking about it. So
maybe there's a new Batman curse because since Ben Affleck took on the part and he was going to do this movie and stuff, maybe they should just shelve this movie and just be like, it's done. No, but I'm not saying, but it's just like them trying to get this movie off the ground. How many different iterations has it been for, Ben Affleck's going to direct it and star in it and write it. Oh, now he's just going to direct it and star in it. Oh, now he's
but that's because he had his own issues.
Now he's not starring in it at all. Let's start from scratch. And then you get this.
But he pulled himself out. He had his own demons was.
That's true. And listen, that's great for me because I didn't like him as Batman or whatever. But at the same time,
you don't like anyone as Batman, Andre. So you don't like anyone as Batman. So
what are you talking about? There's lots of people I like as Batman.
Who do you like as Batman?
Who do I like as Batman? Christian Bale was good.
Okay.
I liked Kevin Conroy's voice as Batman.
Live action.
Live action. I'll take, honestly, I would take West Clooney another shot at Batman. Like he looks the part.
That's favorite.
Who else has done it recently?
That's pretty much
Michael Keaton.
well, yeah, everybody liked Keaton though. Like that's basically our first thing. Val Kilmer wasn't a huge fan of his, but anyways,
that's it. You're done. That's all your live action.
There's something to be said about something having so many issues, and you're right, Rob. Maybe nobody was keeping track of this, but I think they're skirting a really big issue when their most iconic property and most popular media property in Batman, if somebody is going to unfortunately put out a circumstance that can be and that has a stigma on it in our society. I don't know if listen, everybody says it, oh yeah, in the comics he's clearly not all there, but that's very different than
showcasing it on a movie.
Yeah, but maybe they're looking at the success of Joker. Maybe they said, oh, well, if we could clearly make Joker have these problems with the Joaquin Phoenix version, maybe they're thinking that will work as well. And maybe he wants to win an Oscar for it or whatever, you know? So who knows? Now, unfortunately, we're in that whole thing of, oh, maybe we'll never see the director's version and we got to wait 4 or 5 more years to see what's this guy's Matt Reeves director's cut of Batman.
Matt Reeves cut, baby.
Release the Reeves cut.
Reeves cut. John, I have to ask you. Rob brought some really excellent points about toys and talking about kids. Like he's wearing Amazing Spider-Man shirt, which is the gold standard. But little kids love Spider-Man. He's universal. He's loved. He also has some issues with being, an orphan and having an aunt and parents who are, were
well, the uncle was shot down. His aunt is hot as hell, Mr.
Well,
Tony.
the new one. But yeah, like that's the thing about Spider-Man is that he generally is he has problems, but he generally just rolls off them. So do you think that this is is Batman similar property where people love to buy Batman toys, but would going too dark hurt the brand?
I think they're gonna buy Batman stuff regardless. the new McFarlane line is basically skating, like just flying by doing like a million different Batmans, and rightly so. He's the top character that DC's got, and we could argue for days, but you're not gonna beat that Batman is probably the best DC selling book on the market. And you know what, mental health is a huge issue right now, so maybe they should tackle it, and they shouldn't shy away from it. So.
Here's my concern is I remember the outcry of parents in 92 following Batman Returns, which is what caused everything to shift with the Val Kilmer and when they brought in, made it more colorful and poppy and more of a campy, right? With Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
That was such a different time, Rob.
But parents were upset. No, but parents were upset in 92 because of how dark it was. And they were like, we can't, how are we supposed to buy toys? And, when you have the penguin with blood goo coming out of his mouth and eating raw fish. Like
the internet was the thing in 1992.
No, but what I'm saying, it makes it worse because now you have Twitter, which is just an echo chamber that, so that this is my concern is that you start to get the studio starts to cave to these concerns. So all I'm saying is that, and maybe I'm making all this for naught, but it is something that's online right now that people are talking about. And I would hope that WB just says, fuck it. We're behind this and we're backing it and we're going to go forward and not succumb to the pressure. It either makes money or it doesn't. That's at the end of the day, that's a telltale sign. It's going to make money at the box office or it's not. And if it's not, then you know that they've got to go in a different direction. And if it makes all the money in the world, then they continue with the direction they're going in.
I think this is when you need like a Kevin Feige type of guy to, move the ship forward and make a decision for everyone else. And as you said, DC is very unclear with all the merger and what's happening, who's running what and who's doing what. It's nice to have a steady hand, even though he might not be the greatest producer in the universe. Some would say he is, some he's not, but it's nice to have a very steadying voice. And I can't say that for DC right now.
Well, the problem is that movie comes out 2022. And by then, this acquisition by Discovery will have been completed. So will they have any say on the movie? Like, who knows? Who knows? It's all,
Hey, here's the nice thing about all the DC movies. It's not a shared universe. You can do whatever you want. Like, if you don't like it, just wait for the next one. This is not a gotta catch 'em all situation with Marvel where if you don't like it, oh, dude, it's canon. So if you don't like the Batman, don't worry. There's a new Batman coming in 2 years and you just wipe the slate clean. So I don't think anything's connected anymore, as they said. Oh, the Snyderverse is, but other than the Snyderverse, it's like, forget it. Everyone else is brand new. Do whatever you want. So there is a kind of a nice cleansing nature of, hey, man, we can do whatever we want. It works. It works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's the niceness of having the two separate universes where I don't have to love everything DC. If I don't like it, guess what? Who cares? You can just go on its own. As opposed to Marvel, it's like I'm very attached, and when things don't work out, I'm like, oh no, what's that going to mean? So it's a plus and minus for each system. All right, as we close it down and move forward, John, Andre, where can we find you guys on the internets and in the desert of the real?
Yeah, so online, the Instagram is really popping for us. So we're posting a lot of like new stories and posting the products and all that kind of stuff. So if you are an Instagram user, definitely 100% follow us, Heroes World Online. It also gets routed to the Facebook. So if you're a Facebook user, Heroes World Online as well. The website Heroes World Online, basically all those will direct you to our social medias and the website. And then if you're listening to this on the audio, the Spotify and the Apple iTunes or whatever your podcast service is, Heroes World podcast, Heroes World podcast, and give us a like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating if you're on iTunes. Really helps us out.
Awesome, thank you, Andre.
Yeah, and we are our physical brick and mortar store is Warden and Highway 7. That's in Markham, Ontario. So it's just outside of the GTA, just north of Steeles, basically. So we're not really too far. So we're open for curbside pickup. And I think this coming Saturday, I think we are allowed to open back for in-store shopping. So we're really looking forward to that. So of course we're going to follow all the safety protocols, all limited capacity. Please still continue to be a superhero and wear your mask. Bring your hand sanitizer. We will have at the store as well, but just in case. And we look forward to seeing all of these faces that we have not been able to see in the flesh, in the desert of the real. So I'm looking forward to it. So next Saturday. So let's stay vigilant, Toronto and Ontario, so that small businesses can get back to doing what we do best.
And as always, please go out, support local, support your small retailers. The big boys are going to be fine with or without you. Just keep on helping the small guys, the small people, small business owners as much as possible. Every small, even small purchase is super helpful and keeps the lights on. So if you can't do that, please do what you can. As John indicated, like, subscribe, comment. Do all the things you can via social media. It helps them get the reach out just for more people in the GTA who don't know of their existence.
Yeah, and big thanks to everybody who's tagging us, posting, sharing on their stories. Like it really helps out a lot. And it's great to see you all enjoying the products.
Share it to get the network bigger, get their presence all out there, because there are a lot of different stores out there in the GTA, but and there's a lot of things, but let's focus on these two today and get them more reach. Rob, what do you guys have lined up on the Sidekick Show?
Yeah, so tomorrow we finished off our month of May with the the Keanu Reeves movie reviews. We did all the John Wick movies. So we're taking a bit of a divergent tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Divergent, the film?
Yeah, no. We're talking tomorrow night on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. No, we're taking we're going a different direction. We're actually talking about your favorite snacks to eat when you're watching a movie. We'll have some special guests coming in, just kind of talking about their favorite stuff to eat. We encourage people to come jump online and to follow us in the YouTube chats, comment and tell us what your favorite snack. I think there might be some blind taste testing happening, potentially. And as well, this is my family have made a thing. We started, it was unfortunate, it was already scheduled. Today is our first day of a 3-week no junk food binge. So tomorrow night I'm going to be one angry, surly man, because I will have been at least a few days without any junk food. So definitely tune in tomorrow night, 8 o'clock with John and I, 8 o'clock tomorrow night on YouTube.
Yeah,
Twitch.
have your watermelon and mustard ready. That's a sneak.
Is that a
watermelon and mustard?
Wait,
but yeah, and Rob, you got to talk about you got to talk about your great Jeff Lemire episode.
Thanks. Yeah, so if you are interested in some more Jeff Lemire stuff, obviously I mentioned these guys nutted me for it earlier about the underwater welder. But if you tune into my YouTube channel, the 905, I did a bit of a review on some of his books.
We can order that one for you.
Royal City, Gideon Falls, and the Underwater Welder, which, by the way, a couple years ago was purchased by Ryan Gosling for rights for a movie, I think. So that is coming down the pipe. But definitely, if you are interested in the world of Jeff Lemire, you should definitely go to that channel and check it out, because his themes and stuff are universal and something to definitely. They're just so different. It's refreshing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so
Thanks,
that is everything today. Thank you all for joining. Be safe. Have a great one, and we'll see you all next week. We don't know what day it's going to be, so we'll throw it up in the air. But
Yeah, well, that's why you need to put your notification bell on this channel, so that way when a new video drops, it could be midweek. We don't know.
Yep, indeed. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Peace out. See you later.
See you later.
Thank you, Stu.